Salutations, fellow readers, writers, and killers of time on YouTube. My name is Martha Jones, and I would like to use the androgynous sounds of my voice to share with you a few words about fiction and why it matters. Not so awfully long ago, I got to go to trade shows, book fairs, and assorted venues at which I could talk to people about what they like to read all day long. And I felt like I was getting away with something, because I was getting paid to embarrass my publisher of genre fiction and talk to people about books. Nevertheless, at venues of these kinds, there were reliably persons there who would hurt your heart. And for the most part, they came in three varieties. Variety number 1 would tell you, I don't read. Variety number 2 would tell you, I only read the Bible. And variety number 3 would say, I only read nonfiction. Usually my superego prevented me from picking fights with these folks, but it did not stop my id from muttering its rebuttals under its breath. Quoth my id to the fellow who says, I don't read. I mean, if you can tell your gin from your vermouth without reading the label, what more do you need? To the person who says, I only read the Bible, if that is true, I can guarantee that the competition is better read than you are. More on that later. To the person who says, I only read nonfiction, the rebuttal is more complex because I myself love nonfiction. I enjoy my biographies, my craft books, and my dictionaries of questionable words. And there is only so much practical knowledge you can actually gain from fiction. Like reading Sherlock Holmes can make you smarter and better rounded overall, but it doesn't necessarily make you a forensic expert. And if I'm honest, some fiction is pretty stupid. Yet, if we presume that nonfiction is better than fiction by virtue of being nonfiction, we presume incorrectly. Because absolutely anyone can write a book and call it nonfiction. Or if you have the money, you can hire a long-suffering ghostwriter to do it. Not only that, but sometimes nonfiction is the quickest to age on your shelves. Like, not in the way that Sweet Valley High and Animorphs have aged, and the shelf life of your baby names book or your carpentry fundamentals is probably going to be pretty long. If, on the other hand, you are trying to educate yourself about medical procedures in order to be less nervous for your doctor's appointment and you are using a manual that was cutting edge in 1992, you may be actively making yourself dumber, not smarter. Seriously, my mom did that before cataract surgery, scared herself to death. That said, just because there are flaws with certain kinds of nonfiction does not make fiction good. So what does fiction have to offer that nonfiction does not? You could expand your vocabulary depending on what book you picked up. If you are smiling right now, it may or may not be because you are a romance fan who learned about words like tremulous and turgid before your peers. And while there is no guarantee that being able to quote the likes of Cervantes, Heinlein, and Poe on command will lead to bed with the gender of your choice, it does not hurt to have a few of those quotes in your pocket against the day you might want to start a conversation with a cute, nerdy someone in the library. But I think the most wonderful thing about fiction that is not so much a thing in nonfiction is the invitation to interpret the work and take what you want from it. The dynamic of a reader to a work of nonfiction, even a well-loved one, is often like that of a student to a teacher. The book is the authority from which the reader is learning. Fiction, on the other hand, is a lot more like a Rorschach, where different readers will see different things. Remember those folks who say, I only read the Bible? To them, my id would say something along the lines of, okay, I presume in that case that you are reading it as though it is a work of nonfiction. Yet, even if that is the case, there is fiction in your favorite book. Toward the start of the New Testament, there's this fellow that the Hebrews called Yeshua. The Greeks called him something else. I'll probably have to look that up later. But at multiple points when he is more or less the main character of the story, he speaks to his followers in fictional stories called parables. When critics thereafter said, why don't you just say what you mean? He says, so that those who are given to understand will understand. In other words, Mr. Pharisee, sir, if you do not understand or do not like something I have said, that's fine. Please consider that you might not be this author's target audience. Love him or hate him, that guy understood the value of fiction and allowing people to think critically rather than having everything spelled out for them. There are a lot of examples about how one man's diversion is another man's life changer. The example I've actually had on my mind a lot lately is Philip K. Dick's 1968 classic Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, aka Overdrawn at the Memory Bank, aka Blade Runner. At the time the book was written, the Cold War was still going strong, so it was not unpopular in that era of sci-fi to have an enemy who looked like you, but was not like you. When Blade Runner came out, Ridley Scott dismissed the notion that his narrative was cogent to apartheid, but it was cogent to apartheid. The themes of personhood were really heckin' relevant in South Africa in those days. I, as something of a latecomer to the sci-fi genre, did not see Blade Runner until this last year. Laugh in my face if you wanna, I kinda deserve it. But because I have a background, both professionally and with loved ones who were neurodivergent, I saw a compelling autism narrative, particularly in the characters of Rachel and Deckard, because Mr. Scott had instructed his actors to play those characters deadpan, which is not unlike what they used to call Asperger's, where you have all of the human facets and all of the emotions, but it doesn't necessarily translate to your expression. Flat affect, they call it in the medical biz. And that was merely an interpretation of a novel. When I went back to the source material, I found it way more compelling as a trans narrative. You know, in the movie, you can tell who's a replicant and who's not by taking a good, long look in their eyes. In the book, it's the bone marrow, and there is some dispute about the accuracy of the test. Deckard can't necessarily escape the notion that he's been retiring humans on accident. So you might think you can clock a replicant at 20 paces. You can attempt to dehumanize them and calling them by their model number, not their name. But at the end of the day, the only way you can really tell is with an invasive test that is probably against their wishes and none of your business. Besides which, the Earth has been growing steadily more inhospitable to all organic life on it. If the human duplicates can survive on Earth without making trouble for anybody, do we think maybe the effort to other and destroy them is maybe less related to safety and more related to deep-seated xenophobia and political agendas? Maybe? Then there's Overdrawn at the Memory Bank, which is a shimmering, glowing argument against the idea that everybody's interpretation is as good as everybody else's. It is, in fact, possible to be wrong. And that's the beauty of fiction. All fiction does is tell you a story. Whether that story is entertaining or life-changing, you get to decide. As always, thank you for giving these videos a shot. I post whenever the day job allows. Meantime, take it easy. Loves you. Bye.
Like my channel, buy my crap, doo-dah, doo-dah. There's no time to take a nap, oh the doo-dah day. Hey!
When I was 19 years old, I was dating a young man who could most charitably be described as someone we date before we have standards. And in my lucid moments, I don't know if I can claim emotional abuse per se, but he did seem to harbor a keen dislike for most things I cared about. Included on that list were tie-dye, wind chimes, leopard print, idealism, Shakespeare, theater, fiction. As you have seen, I got some feelings about that last one. I sometimes count him as my first fiancé, but I don't know if that's right, because he didn't actually propose to me. He just told me we were getting married, and I believed him. Glad I stopped doing that. Had we gotten married, I would have been very sad. However, King Solomon was mistaken, and there is no such thing as an ill wind that blows no good. For you see, his last name was Graf, which is to say that if he and I got married, my last name would be Graf. Therefore, if ever a person we knew happened to see us walking down the street, that person could turn to his fellow and say, "Look, there goes a paragraph." Don't look at me that way. Not all the jokes can be good. You got to expect that sometimes.